All right. Hey there, folks. As the world outside our doors continues to go just a little bit bonkers, I figured I would keep bringing book tour to you. So, welcome to Russ's Rockin' Rollercoaster, intriguing interviews with creative minds. Now, tonight was going to be our spring 2025 season finale, but I decided to do one more episode next month. Hey, it's my show. I make the rules. So there you go. But if you're a horror fan, you'll be glad you tuned in tonight. So please welcome tonight's guest, horror writer, poet, and publisher Angela Yuriko Smith, a third-generation Shimanshu Ryukyuan American. Angela is a two-time Bram Stoker Award winner, publisher of Space and Time magazine, and the newest president of the Horror Writers Association. Welcome back, Angela.
Thanks for having me on here.
All right, great. Just a heads up to the folks at home. If you have any questions or comments from me or Angela, put them in the chat box and during the show, and we'll get to a few at the end. Okay, Angela, as we always do, we're going to start at the beginning. Where were you born? Where'd you grow up?
Madisonville, Kentucky, and Cheyenne, Wyoming.
So how long? How long were you in Madison? Until when?
Uh, Short enough that I never got the accent, thank goodness, but
Okay.
probably 2 years.
Okay, and then Wyoming. Wyoming. Okay.
Yeah, that was probably, well, up until pretty recently, that was the longest place I'd ever lived. I think I lived there 10 years in Cheyenne.
Oh, Cheyenne.
So,
Okay.
yeah, genuine cowboy stuff.
Wow. Okay. Genuine. All right. So hold on a second there. That's interesting. I've never had anyone on the show from Wyoming. So, so what was the lineup at home? Was it just you? Did you have brothers, sisters? Like, what was the situation there?
Oh, I am an only child. Yeah, it was just me and my mom and my dad. I latchkey kid. Remember in the 80s when that was okay? I
Oh,
guess
sure.
the
Oh, yeah.
70s. It would be the 70s that was okay. So I was definitely a latchkey
You're,
kid.
you're talking to a
Yeah.
latchkey kid. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of freedom in being a latchkey kid. I was lucky because my parents had a huge library. And
Oh,
so that was pretty much, and they locked the TV up. So I attribute a lot of that.
okay. So hold
The
on.
only thing I can do is write and read.
So let's set the stage here a little bit. So you're in Cheyenne. You're in cowboy country.
hmm
Back in the 70s and 80s. You're an only child. So what did your parents do professionally?
They were actually students. My mom was a pharmacist. She's Okinawan, and so she had a big fear that my dad, who's a Vietnam veteran, and I guess he almost died at one point. And I do remember it as a kid. And then that kind of threw her into this fear of she was going to revert back to like the extreme poverty that she grew up in with like dirt floors and all that. So she decided to be a pharmacist. And that's kind of the defining childhood memory is just studying to be a pharmacist. It kind of ruled the entire growing up process.
Okay,
So,
so you say pharmacist, and the reason I'm smiling is that so in my former life, so I was a journalist, and my first full-time job as a journalist was writing for American Druggist magazine, where
oh, funny.
I covered the not just pharmacy, but pharmacies, and independent pharmacists and pharmacies for years. So to this day, pharmacists are like my people.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, I will say, like, the claim to fame she has is she got to give medicine to Ronald Reagan.
Is
He
that
used to
right?
work at Bethesda, yeah, Bethesda Naval, and she got to give him his medicine, whatever his prescription was at the time.
So did she become a certified pharmacist?
Oh, yeah, she's been a pharmacist forever.
Wow.
She is to this day still actively working as a pharmacist,
Oh,
and she's got to be like 70 something. So,
wow. So did you spend any time in the pharmacies with her?
oh, yeah, that is the great disappointment of my life with my mother is I was supposed to be a pharmacist and I was just so interested in writing, and she did inform me that writers don't make money. And I chose to flout that and disagree and go do it anyway. So now she's happy. Now she's happy. She's actually said a couple things like, it's a good thing that, I had all those books around and taught you to write before kindergarten. Mhm. But yeah, that was at the time, it was she was very disappointed that I decided to throw my life away like this.
So one of I actually have two. I have two anecdotes I like to tell from my pharmacy days, and one of them is when, and actually they're now that I think about it, they're related. So this was probably 1990. I don't know, seven, eight. I don't remember exactly. I just had lunch, a huge lunch, and I was like, I had like food coma, and then the editor who I was working for said, "Oh, Pfizer has this big announcement," because I was working in Manhattan. You have to go over to the Pfizer offices, which was only, a 10-minute walk. They have some new thing coming out. Go to cover it. All right. So I go over there, sit in the back of the room, and literally I'm doing this, falling asleep because I just had food coma. And it's like in one of these like, these dark rooms. It was to
Cozy, quiet.
it was to announce Viagra.
Oh,
I was literally dozing in the back of the room.
that's hilarious.
Part two, same story. A few months later, there were all these rumors going around that you could get Viagra without a prescription, like illegally. So what I did was I did a sting. I started calling pharmacists to see if they would just send me Viagra without a prescription, which was illegal.
Yeah.
And one of them, I said, "Oh, I'm Joe Schmo. This is who I am. I need Viagra." He sent it to me, and then I busted him. And then he got
Oh
pissed.
man.
And then he got pissed at me for saying that I was being unethical for not saying that I was a journalist.
Well, that is kind of how you get the story.
He said, I don't even remember who I said I was, but they literally sent about the blue pill, the blue bombers. They showed up in my
Oh
office.
my goodness.
Yep, they sent it to me. So anyway, enough about me. All right. So mom was a pharmacist, and so dad was in Vietnam. Um, do you recall for how long he served?
It wasn't actually that long. It was just I think I want to say 18 months.
Okay.
And then he got pinned down in something like a really bad skirmish. It was in I read the newspaper article from it, like at that time. I wasn't born, of course, when it happened. But it was pretty bad. And he wound up being 100% disabled.
Mm.
And they said he'd never walk again.
Oh,
So
gee.
he never really worked. He trained as a gunsmith, but he rehabilitated himself to later run like 6 miles. Like
Really?
his legs look terrible, like they're just huge craters and metal, and that was the health risk. Why he got sent to the hospital and almost died is because shrapnel had dislodged and went in his bloodstream, and I think settled in his heart. Or I'm no
Wow.
medical person, but that's my like layman's
Wow.
understanding of it. And he did survive that, but that's what prompted my mom then to be like, "Oh, I need to make money," or
Was he, I mean, aside from the physicality, which was obviously, that's very
mm,
disorienting and traumatic and upsetting, was he okay as like a person, or was he kind of shaken up from combat, or
for a long time. No, he's still dealing with it, honestly.
yeah,
It's just like it scars you emotionally, mentally.
yeah.
You never get over it, really. I'd say he's probably doing better now. Um, you know, uh, we're all doing our best in this world, but like growing up, we did not have a very good relationship, and we still have distance because of it.
Right.
But it is what it is. He did survive. I really don't know what I would change because, we're all here because of everything that happened as it did. So,
So let
but
me
yeah, it was
yeah.
tough. It was
So
pretty tough. But he didn't have a great childhood,
right,
which is why he went to Vietnam. He
right.
actually lied and went in early, so
So
that's just
yeah, he's,
weird years.
he escaped one battlefront to go to another one. Yeah,
hmm
yeah.
Yeah, and the story was crazy. Everybody in his platoon died, and he wound up being pretty destroyed. And he crawled out of this temple, and I don't know if I'm misrepresenting some of these facts, or but this is the story I got, and I did read the newspaper article on it. But he had to crawl out like on his elbows because his legs wouldn't work anymore. And I think he crawled like a mile or something through the jungle to escape. And then he got to, yeah. And I live in the jungle now, and I don't even want to walk barefoot through the jungle.
Wow.
I can't imagine being on eye level and,
Wow. But what a I mean, to me, that signifies like what a will to live.
yeah, yeah. I think it's a Scottish thing. He's Scottish blood, or something. And it's just like something in that blood is just like, you never give up.
Yeah, yeah. Which actually leads me to my next question. So just talk to me about your family heritage. So stick with dad for a minute. So he was Scottish.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yep.
is he
Grant clan.
is he full blown Scottish, or was he like mixed from other uh, elsewhere in Europe, or that you know of?
I don't know, honestly. He looks very full Scottish. He's short. He's like 5 feet tall. He's wide, like wide, huge bones, kind of wide, and red curly hair. He kind of looks like the original Captain Kirk. I forgot his name now, but he looks very much like him, but possibly a little bit like more square,
Oh,
which is probably why I never got into the first Star Trek, because I was like, ew, that's like my dad, and he's
oh,
hitting on the alien woman.
uh,
Gross.
cuts too close to home, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. So did he have the Scottish brogue, or was he just fully
Oh no, no. He was like second or third generation,
Irish?
I think.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And I don't honestly know that much about that side. I know they came over and they settled in Kentucky, which is why I was born in Madisonville, Kentucky.
Right.
And there's I guess like a group of Scottish that came over and became like the mountain clans. And then there was I mean, it's in history. There's like some kind of big fight between like two different clans or something, and it's like part of American history and all that. I obviously haven't been that much up on it, but they were part of that whole group, the mountain people, and the stills, the whole thing. My grandmother was pretty mountain womany.
Okay. All right. So you got
Yeah.
you come from one half Scottish mountain people.
Hmm.
And what about mom's side?
She's Okinawan, so she's half of Okinawan. So then what does that make me? Like a
Yeah.
fourth
Right.
Okinawan. So, and then she grew up in Hawaii, spoke English, didn't learn English until she was 12. And I just always think of what that must have been like, because her mother, I don't know either of my real grandfathers. I think they both went to prison, but her mother could barely speak English. And all of a sudden, this Navy guy, they got married. I'm saying this from my mom's perspective, got married, and suddenly they all moved to Alaska. And she had to learn English, and she went from living in a tropical place on dirt floors in Hawaii to, Alaska. So
In a,
like culture shock
was
in
she,
on every level.
so I mean, Alaska is a massive. Was it in a snowy region of Alaska?
Probably. I think it might have been Anchorage. I might be getting that wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was Anchorage.
Right. That is a huge change.
Yeah.
So does the your Okinawan culture, did that resonate down to you?
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
what
And
ways?
that's the thing with Okinawans is they were they're part of Japan.
Right.
They're illegally owned by Japan. So in Okinawa, they're the second class citizen. I mean, Japan, they're the second class citizen. So when they came over, a lot of them would say they were Japanese, because the Japanese were second class citizen for America. But my family in particular were Yuta, which is the mediums. So they would speak to the dead and everything, which in Okinawa was a job. That's just what they did. In America, that's a witch. You know what I mean? And that's very negative. And so my family came over. I actually didn't find out I was Okinawan instead of Japanese until I think I was 35.
Oh,
And I
wow.
had no idea any of the history, because it was to protect the family.
Mm,
Everybody was trying to pretend to either be Japanese. And then the goal was that your kids, your descendants would be white presenting, and that eventually you would just be white, as the family blended out. So that was the goal of my grandmother's, to marry a white man
right.
and, you know, start blending it, which I find funny, because now we're all flipped. Like, that's literally where a lot of my success came from, was when I attached back to finding out the Okinawan roots, and then opened up a lot of things, but also just identity. Like, then kind of going, oh, that's why I do this. It makes so much sense. Oh, look, I've never had a people, like the sense of a people. And
Right.
then I started studying the Okinawan people and going, I thought I was the only weirdo who danced like that. It was just like a lot of, I could see my face, even though I'm very white presenting, like, you know what I mean? I'm only a third. It's not like I'm Asian, but it was just weird to feel that connection because I hadn't felt that with anybody ever.
Have you ever,
So,
have you yourself gone to Okinawa?
mm-mm.
No.
No, but that is the plan. Brazil is a stepping point from here because I can actually, I qualify for Japanese citizenship because of the Okinawa and because of the low birth rates. So I'm third generation, which I believe is Nisi. And then I and my husband can apply for citizenship. And then my children can all apply for citizenship, but not their husbands,
Right. So,
so because they're trying to get
hang
more
on, just
people over.
because you and I spoke offline. So
Mhm.
we'll skip ahead for now. So you're right now physically in Brazil, correct?
In Brazil, yes.
In Brazil?
In Santa Catarina, which is like way south. So it's everybody thinks of like Rio de Janeiro. I can't remember any other tourist spots off the top of my head, but we're way down south where we're usually the first English speakers a lot of people have met here. And my
So
husband's Australian, so I can't say Americans, but so I'll say
okay.
English
All
speakers.
right. So you got a lot going on here. So you got a lot of cultural diversity kind of wedged into one family. So how is it that you made your way to Brazil?
My daughter actually, well, I should start from the beginning, and I've been trying to get out of the US since I was 20. Not for any reason other than I just really like exploring and I always wanted to live in all the places of the world. I mean, there's a lot of countries out there.
Yep.
And so my first visa that I tried to get was Montreal. They didn't want me. Go imagine that, a 20-year-old with no skills. Well, I was a writer. Hello. Didn't fly. And then my next visa was I had met my husband, years later, and he was Australian. And so I moved to Australia. Didn't get my visa then either. Go figure, they still didn't want a writer. So my daughter married a Brazilian, met the same way. I met my husband in a game online. She met her husband in a game online. She moved, well,
And
she
and you're
actually
engaged?
only meant to visit him.
Okay.
She only meant to visit him, and then COVID hit. And I remember talking to her on the phone going, well, don't fly back right now. Wait until this is over. Because it's only going to be like a week or two, right? And this whole thing will be. Yeah, and so she's still here. She has a baby, I think she's been here like 5 years now. Well, since COVID. She actually came here in September of 2019 for that, just to meet this guy that she, basically a friend that was turning into more. And then, yes, is still here. And then we came to visit. I can't remember what year it was, but a couple years later, and just absolutely fell in love with it. And so it was like, you know what? We both work online. Why not? You know, I've never, and we always used to say, because my husband was Australian, so when I lived in Australia, he kind of did all the things. Like he had to pay the bills, he had to do all the navigating because, you know, it's his country. And when we lived in the US, because then he came to the US and got his visa there, I did all the things because I'm the citizen, so everything is in my name. So we kept always saying if we could find someplace that was a new country to both of us, that would be ideal. So it wasn't like, it was just kind of, we saw the opportunity. We're like, this is what we've always said we wanted.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's just do it. We work online.
Right.
If we don't like it, we'll come back. I mean, we did visit it first and then came
Okay.
back, and then we gave away everything. We gave away a house. We opened our doors and said garage sale, basically come in
Wait,
and
you gave away your house?
take everything.
You didn't
Yeah,
sell you
yeah.
didn't
Well,
sell your house, you gave it away.
yeah, we actually, and it was a little bit of a long story because we were going to rent it out. And then the rental companies, it turns out, it's very hard to work with rental companies. And the ones that we were working with were pretty scammy. And so we were like, we were going to give it to somebody else to do a bed and breakfast in. So it wasn't like an initial, like, here, have our dream house, because we loved
Right.
that house. It was across from a park in the
Right.
historic district of Kansas City. It was a great house. It was 110 years old. It was beautiful. We loved it. And we got it on such a deal. We paid 95 for it, 95,000, and then they sold it for 200,000. So it was a good investment.
All right, fair.
But when we were over here and we realized that the rental company was just it just was very questionable, all the things that were going on. They wanted like $12,000 to redo the inside of the house that we were like, but you said it was fine when we signed up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, well, we need to redo those floors that are fine. There are floors that are fine. So
Fair enough. All right.
we did the math and realized we could pay $1,500 a month to keep it. And in the hopes that we would then be able to rent it to get $300 a month back in profit. And that's crossing our fingers. The air conditioner doesn't go out. It had solar panels. So one hailstorm,
All right,
was
fair.
going to be a mess.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah. And
So
so
it
then
was.
we were like, or we could just give it to the person who wants to do the bed and breakfast, like free and clear here, quick claim deed. And then we have $1,500 now.
So, all right.
So we're like, see
Okay.
that we only had 5,000. Like we
Okay.
don't get 5 years. So there wasn't
All
like
right.
a ton of equity.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So let's go back
Yeah.
for a second. So let's go back to, we skipped ahead. We're going to go back a little bit. So you're a kid, you're at home, the TV is locked up. Oh Lord. And but you got lots of books. What were you just, I'll read anything, or did you gravitate more towards one genre or another, or talk to me about that?
And I started out reading everything, including things that were probably way above my age level, including the succubus. Didn't know what on earth I was reading. I was just waiting for her to kill the guy, but all this other stuff was going on that was really confusing. And Star Wars was one of the big ones that I was just like, wow, what an amazing story. But it was horror, is it just kind of hit me out of the blue. I went to a Catholic school, and there was a book called, I actually still have this book because I later went and found this book so I could have my own copy, in the next room, of course. But it's Alfred Hitchcock's. That's one of Alfred Hitchcock's
Yeah.
Tales for the Very Young books.
Mhm.
And I found it on a lower shelf, checked it out, read the stories, absolutely fell in love with it. Mostly because I could see myself in those stories. My dad was from Vietnam. There was a lot of like yelling, violent kind of activity going on.
Right.
We had ghosts because on the Okinawan side, there was always ghosts about. You'd hear voices that in empty rooms, my mom and my grandmother would have dreams that they would tell each other, and then the thing would really happen. So my world was a supernatural, scary, violent world. And then I went, found this book, and the book was full of that, which actually made me feel comfortable. Like, oh, I'm not alone. This is, other people do this. And that's when I became a horror fan. I think I was probably second grade. I read that book so many
Wait,
times. I would
you were
check it
reading
out.
Alfred Hitchcock in second grade. Wow.
Yeah, well, the Tales for the Very Young.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay.
Yeah,
Wait,
yeah, they're meant for kids.
you said something interesting though. We touched on it a few minutes ago, but go back to you just said you lived in a scary supernatural world. Mm,
Mhm.
More.
Well, there were ghosts. So my earliest memories are demons in the house, like whether they're there or if it's a cultural thing. Interestingly enough, if you look at the definition from is like the DSRM-5, the thing that tells us what are the
Yep.
what makes us crazy.
Uh-huh.
It says if you hear voices, it's psychotic. It's a symptom of psychosis, unless it's cultural. I have been so stuck on that. Like, so are you saying that voices are real unless you're a white person? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, that doesn't seem right. But anyways, culturally, there was just my earliest memories. I think I was probably two. And we had a basement door that would get kicked open every single night from the inside. And I remember like, my parents and seeing their faces, and they were so scared, and seeing like a TV table smashed against the side of the wall. And my dad had put like multiple latches on the door to keep things from busting out. And the family story goes, I almost died in that basement because I had somehow gotten out of my crib, and the thing had busted open. And I think this was when we had just moved in there. And like I said, my dad's a gun guy. And so it came busting open. And then he went running down there, I guess got a gun and ran down there and was all like, gonna get this guy, whoever's living in the basement, kicking the basement door open. and he saw a head in the basement window. And it freaked him out. So thank goodness he didn't shoot it, because apparently it was me.
Oh
But he
God.
shoved like just a bunch of, oh, so they probably did just move in, because there was a bunch of furniture and boxes on the landing. And so he just shoved it at this head to, scare the guy off, and ran. And then they heard me crying. And so then the big mystery was, how did I get in the basement?
Right.
How did I get out of my crib? How did I get through a locked door to get in the basement? Or did something kick the door, get me, take me down there? So, and that was just kind of like the beginning. And then from there, it just went. I never lived in a non-haunted house where things didn't chase me up the stairs and there'd be voices in the next rooms, and hearing stuff like that, until I left my parents' house. So I feel like it's there. There is a memory that I have with my dad where I've, in later life, feel like I've pieced together a lot of what was happening. And it was a game that this ghost, now I could say ghost, and I would play. And I would sit with my back to this big picture window, and my dad would be sitting in an armchair. And we did this like apparently like every day from my memory.
Yeah.
And he would be super upset. And behind him was my friend, this ghost, who now it sounds scary, but as a kid, I don't recall being scared of him. But like from memory, half of his face was kind of blown off, and there's like just a lot of gore. And he was wearing an olive drab uniform, but it wasn't a military olive drab uniform, like green, like a green, yeah, olive drab, I guess. And we would play this game where he would look at me and he'd make a funny face, like, and then I would giggle. I would look at my dad, and then I'd look at him, and then I'd giggle. And then I'd look back at my dad, and then like look at him, and we giggle. And then it would make my dad more and more scared, of course. So I'm not going to blame my dad at all for the relationship that we had, because I kind of did in as an adult thinking back. But then the end of the game was always that this guy would put his hand on my dad's shoulder. And then I could tell my dad felt it, because he would always just, and his eyes would bug out. And then I would giggle because it was hilarious to a 2-year-old. That was the game.
Yeah, right. Holy cow.
Yeah. So years pass, and I was asking my mom about Okinawan stuff. And we don't all talk a lot because of this childhood, all the things. But I was asking her about Okinawan stories, because I was trying to write Tortured Willows and everything. And I just don't have a lot of what really happened. I mean, talk to my grandmother and stuff like that. But when you have a culture of everybody trying to pretend like something didn't happen,
Right.
it's really hard to get the truth.
Wow.
So I was asking her about this stuff, and we've kind of rebuilt our relationship, which I think is great. And she, out of the blue, she just got really quiet, whatever we're talking about. And she said, "Do you remember Charlie?" And I was like, "Charlie? Like, no, who's Charlie?" And she says, "That was your invisible friend when you were a baby, and we lived in Madisonville." I was like, "No." And then all of a sudden I heard
Oh, that was the
the
ghost.
noise. And I remembered, and the reason why I called him Charlie was because the only noise that he would make that I could hear was a really staticky radio noise. And it would go like Alpha, Charlie.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I called him Charlie. So, but then I started thinking about it. I was like, now as an adult, I'm like, that was probably a Vietnamese soldier or something. Like, I don't know for sure. But then I'm like, the reason why all your houses are haunted is because it's following dad. It's nothing to do with the Okinawan side of
Right.
it and the ghosts and everything. So like, how crazy is that?
Oh, wow. Wow.
But
Wow.
but
Just
yeah, so that was like, yeah, that was just the life. That was it.
just remind me not to sleep over at your house. Okay. So
Oh, well, now it's fine. I left all the ghosts.
yeah. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit. So when did you first get, when I say serious, I mean a real significant commitment towards writing poetry and fiction?
I'm going to tell you, second grade.
Okay.
Yeah, and we had a class project, and it was the first time I guess had imposter syndrome, and also had my dream shot down. It was by a teacher, misguided, but we were supposed to write what we were going to be when we grew up.
Right.
And I said a writer and a mother, and she informed me that neither pays very well,
Oh,
and I really need to think about different career fields. And so I did kind of like, I was like, oh, I guess I'll be, I can't remember what I wrote then, like a
Right.
princess, or I wasn't very invested in it because I really wanted to be a writer and a mother.
Right.
And then it was probably the next year or two, I was, I'd had this, I read Ranger Rick a lot. I loved Ranger Rick. And I had read an article about the whales, the plight of the whales. And so I decided I was going to save the whales. And so I went to a dirt road, Cheyenne, Wyoming. There's a lot of them. And I wrote SOS, save the whales, in rocks on the road. And it took me hours from my memory. It probably was like 10 minutes. And then I sat on the side of the road, like waiting, because, this next car that drove by was going to read that message and save the whales. They were going to realize the error of mankind's ways. And of course, first car that went by just didn't even look at them. They probably didn't even see them because they were rocks. But for some reason, that just crushed me. Like, I just like, my voice doesn't matter. Nobody will ever hear what I have to say. I can do nothing in this world. Like those kind of crushing things. And I went home, and I remember laying on like terrible olive green shag carpet, eating a TV dinner with the foil lid, just to date this a little bit. And I was reading a comic that I really wish that I could find again. But it was a villain, and he was just kicking everybody's butt. Like Superman and Wonder Woman, I believe, were there, and he was winning, and he was crushing them with words, like language. And he said something to the effect of, "He who controls the words controls the world." And that's when I think that,
Mm.
before I was like, oh, I can't be a writer because they don't get paid. But then this villain is telling me, if I control words, I control the world. I can do anything I want. And so it kind of like, the teacher lied to me then in my mind. And she's just trying to keep me away from that power. So yeah, I could totally save the whales. I just have to find the right words.
Wow.
And so from there, that was all I ever wanted to do.
So
And
you
that's
so you
kind of
found
all
your
I did do.
you found your motivation through a villain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. So I don't know where, I guess we would need to go to a therapist to find out exactly what that means. But
You know what? You heard the right thing at the right time from the right voice in the right way.
yeah. And I was going to use that power to save the whales.
Yeah.
So
So
I
you
consider that a goodness.
there you go. Right. Okay, fair enough. All right, so you have gravitated into its varying degrees into poetry. Now, I have to admit,
Mhm.
so I've read poetry over the years, but it's an art form that I find really elusive. I just can't seem to wrap my head around as the writer. I just can't wrap
Mhm.
my head around the way to structure or express myself through poetry. I'm just a Neanderthal when it comes to poetry. Talk to me a little bit about how you connect with poetry and why that's a medium of expression that works for you or brings out a way to communicate that maybe doesn't quite work for you in other ways.
I think it's because you can speak so much in metaphor. So you can tell a truth that you don't want to be exposed by. So if I want to say something to you, like, we want to unburden ourselves. That's a human trait.
Right.
I have this terrible secret I want to tell somebody, but if I tell them, somebody could get in trouble, my reputation, people won't like me anymore. There's a million reasons why not to tell people the truth. But with poetry, you can unburden yourself and tell the truth without them even knowing what you're talking about. So you get the cathartic release, but you can still keep your secrets to yourself. And that's, I think, the way I look at it a lot. And I also find everything in my mind is connected. And so if I'm talking about a cup of tea, I have a cup of tea over here. That's my inspiration. I'm talking about a cup of tea and how it's half full and it's gotten cold. That can mean so many things,
Right.
you know. And so when then something happens in my life, I go back to that cup of tea that I was looking at, and then it all connects up into a story, because a poem is really just a story. It's just a story that's kind of truncated, and you've taken it down to the essence of a story. You've pulled out all the fluffy words,
Right.
and just kept that essence. Like you've almost made a sigil out of a story.
All right. So,
So I
so
think
like,
I think that's why I like it.
so I mean, if I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like, that poetry for you is sort of it facilitates the sort of the expression of truths that are sort of camouflaged in code.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the other thing that's good about it, especially in a way, if you want to use it to get a message across, songs or poems,
Right? That's true.
and you can tell a story. And I love writing stories, obviously,
Right.
but I can tell a story, but the reader has to have that time to be able to sit down and read my story and get the message that I'm trying to say. And hopefully I did say the message. It came clear in the 1,200 words or 5,000 words or however many words.
Mhm.
But a poem, I can say that, and it's one page. It's almost like a throwaway emotional gift. Here's what I was trying to say. I know you have time to read it, and now we're done. I hope I affected you. I hope it meant something to you, but it wasn't that much of an investment of time, so, and then hopefully that it will resonate and they'll go back to it, or. But I
Fair.
think why we write is to communicate and affect other people with what we're writing. And so poetry just is a kind of a quicker way to do that in some ways.
All right, fair enough. So you have been publishing Space and Time magazine. So we had you on the show a couple of years back, but for those who may have forgotten or just hearing it for the first time, how did you come to Space and Time? And as the genre evolves, so first talk to me about how you got into Space and Time, and then talk to me now about in what ways, if any, that you see, sci-fi, fantasy, and some horror sort of evolving, and kind of what you're looking for from submissions from other authors.
Oh, absolutely. And it's kind of funny because Gordon Limsner, who is actually the founder of Space and Time, is in the
Yeah.
audience right now.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, Gordon started the magazine in 1966 in high school on a mimeograph machine. And I'm always like huge kudos because I did not keep anything from high school at all. And he created a legacy in high school. So I think that's pretty special. And then Hildy Silverman took it over from Gordon
Yeah.
after he had done, I think, 100 issues. And he can correct me since he's in chat if I misremember something. And then I took it over from Hildy, I want to say in 2019.
Right.
I had just turned 50. So that was my 50th birthday present and the house we gave away. So I still have the magazine. And I came across Space and Time because I had decided I was doing a lot of self-publishing. Because I was actually a journalist, by the way. And then I retired into writing fiction, but I was publishing myself because I already did layout and it just made sense. And then I realized at some point that I had turned my career into a bubble. So I had this readership, but it wasn't growing at all because it was the same people
Right.
all the time. And so I was like, well, I guess I need to start publishing in other places. That's why you do that, because then you get new readers. And so it's like I'm gonna start submitting stories to magazines and poems and stuff. And who has just published among my friends and where did they publish? And Christina Singh had just been in Space and Time, and I'd seen the news and everything. So I was like, cool, I'll apply, I'll send something to Space and Time. Went over there and was crushed to find a letter from Hildy saying that they were having to close the magazine. But at the end of it, she had this hook, this terrible hook that was like, if anybody could possibly publish this, if there was anybody who had the experience that could take on the magazine and keep it going, like that would be amazing or something. And I was like, and I had just published, like when I retired from newspaper work, I started my own newspaper for a year and then realized, wow, why did I do that? What was I thinking? But
Already exists here, right? Yeah.
yeah, like why would I want to keep going? So I had actually entered that mindset of like, I'm going to sit back and write fiction and enjoy the rest of my life with no deadlines,
Right.
and it's going to be fabulous. And then I saw that line and I was like, well, it's not me. I'm not going to take on this magazine because I just did that and it's a lot of work.
And then you did it.
And it just, because it was the history of it. It had been, I think it was 55 years old at that time. And it was just like, that's what kept coming back to me is like, Angela, It's not like it just started 5 years ago. You're literally, you could keep it going and you're just going to let it drop because you want to take a vacation. How selfish. So originally, my plan was to just do it until I could find the new owner. Like, all right, I'll keep it going, but I'm passing it on to whoever this belongs to as early as possible because I'm going to go have a good life and write fiction and drink margaritas. And well, that didn't happen because I wound up falling in love with the magazine. So,
As you do.
yeah. Yeah. And so now I'm still here and yeah, just absolutely love it. It's probably one of the best things I've done. It's definitely one of the things I'm the most proud of publishing, and I'm not even in it. You know what I mean? I mean, I've got like a little
Yeah.
column, the editorial in the beginning, but it's just so cool to see everybody's stories go out. We are semi-pro, and as far as I'm concerned, we'll always stay semi-pro so that we can be that first voice, that first opportunity
Yeah.
and we get excellent stories. We wind up having amazing pro writers. Jonathan Mayberry submits stuff. Well, I say submits, he sends me stuff, and then yeah, Jonathan Mayberry sends it. You take it.
Yep.
You
Yes, you
push that
do.
because it's good. Yeah. But yeah, it's a wonderful magazine. I feel like it has its own soul and it does not want to go anywhere. So I picture it's going to be here in 100 years.
Awesome. All right. So just a
So,
quick interlude for those who came in a little late. If you have any questions or comments for Angela, put them in the chat box and we'll get to a few at the end of the show. All right. So you've also become the new president of the
mhm.
HWA. So congratulations, I think.
Oh, thank you.
I think.
Yeah, there's always a sucker somewhere,
Yeah.
right?
And so, I mean, personally, and we were just talking about this offline, and I've talked about this on the show before. I've only kind of become a part of the horror community in the last, 3, 4 years or so. For me, it's been fantastic. But of course, there are always issues within any kind of community. So, what's your goal with HWA, and what, if any, changes would you like to see within the horror community more broadly, and then more specifically within HWA?
Um, I want to keep us together. There's so many stressors right now in the world. I look at I'm going to wax a little bit poetic, I guess, and maybe a little idealistic. I have been known to be idealistic, but I really feel like horror is one of the most important genres. I know nobody says that, and it's not just because I'm the
No,
president,
no,
but I'm there because I feel
yeah.
that way.
Angela, we were just
And
talking about this offline actually before the show started, and I was
yeah,
waxing poetically about how, for me, how really welcoming and incredible the horror
mhm.
community has been, and I love being a part of it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we've always been inclusive. And then one of the reasons is because, and we talked about this before the show, because we understand what it's like to be the monster. We
Right.
understand that we're all monsters in some ways. People are monsters sometimes. And also that sometimes the monster isn't the monster. And that sometimes it's a misunderstanding. Like think of
Right.
Frankenstein.
Right.
Was he a monster or were we just being a bunch of dicks,
Yep.
to the monster and making him the monster? So I think that's why we're so inclusive. It was during COVID, and I actually, one of my stokers back there is because I wrote this essay. So I always appreciate this study, but I had come across this study that said during COVID, fans of horror, like writers of horror, fans of horror, people who watch horror movies, fared the best mentally. We were the most resilient. And the reason why is because we role play the worst. So instead of being scared and letting it worry us, we figure out how to face it. We also come to grips with we may not win. You may not escape the
Mhm.
zombies, but by God, you're going to fight not to be that, to be the final girl or boy. So now, flash forward to now, and there's a whole lot of scared people out there and a lot of uncertainty. And I really feel like this is the moment that we, the horror writers, need to step up
Yeah.
because we're the most hopeful genre. And
Right.
I know that also we don't usually hear that, but we give people hope that we can survive. We teach practical things like don't wear a white t-shirt because blood shows up on it and is too much of a temptation for anybody with a chainsaw.
Yeah.
And also like fear winds up being what takes us out. The person that panics and opens the door and then the zombies come in. And another lesson that we all know is stick together.
Yes.
The people that separate and run through the house scared
Right.
get picked off. So we understand the importance of community. And so that's what I want with the HWA, is that we recognize that we have this gift and this power and this mission, this greater mission to the world right now. We are literally the genre with the light that can go, okay, come over here. We got you. I know it's pretty scary, but we have a flashlight because we prepared, because we always know that night is coming.
Fair enough. All right. So it's been announced publicly, so I feel like it's fair game to bring it up. So talk to me about what's happening with Cemetery Dance, because I think it touches on some things that are bigger than Cemetery Dance.
Oh yeah. This is actually something I would like to address, because the HWA gets requested to step in a lot for situations. And what people need to understand is
Oh, I'm
we
sorry, just
actually do not have the
for
jurisdiction.
those who don't know, just frame up what's
Mhm.
going on there.
Oh yeah, cemetery dance. And I actually don't know every single detail. Like, I don't want to misrepresent
Mhm.
something,
Mhm.
but I know there was some problems between royalties being paid to authors. And because of it, the HWA could take action, because we can only take action with what's in our jurisdiction. We cannot go to publishers randomly and be the police, because we're not the police. But in this case, we could request, because of the issues that are happening, and I am speaking from myself,
Yeah.
so I could be misrepresenting the situation. But we did ask that they don't take pitches at StokerCon because of what is happening. And like I said, we don't have any power to close people down. We're not the police. We're not judges, but we do what we can, because our mission is to promote horror and to protect and promote our members and to do what's best for our members.
Right.
So I know we have a lot of situations where people would like us to step in and do something, and we literally can't. Like, legally, we can't.
Right. So just
Yeah, but in this case, we could do something.
So bigger picture. So it really kind of
Mhm,
comes down to, and again, I just want to dive in just a little bit more for anyone who doesn't
mhm,
fully understand. And again, I'm not saying that I'm the authority on it, but Cemetery Dance, which has been around for quite a while, has over the years started to develop a little bit of a reputation for not paying their authors on time or at all, and
mhm.
rights issues, and it kind of blew up recently to the point where there's some real there's some very serious complaints about Cemetery
Yeah.
and it's about not honoring their commitments to their authors. Now, even if you take Cemetery Dance out of it, and just there are publishers all over the place, and there are some very good ones who are reputable and strong. Some
Mhm.
are sort of like, they're okay, and some of them which are very clearly kind of not so okay. For the authors who are out there and they're looking to get published, they're looking to get placed, what do you recommend in terms of how authors can properly vet who are the solid, reputable publishers for their genre and who are not?
It's so funny. We could actually probably have like a 3-hour show on this, because
All
you're
right, that's a separate.
one of
We
my
don't have we don't
favorite
have three we don't
subjects.
have
But
3 hours. You have about 30 seconds.
okay, I will say the best thing you can do is find out why you want to publish. And because there's different reasons. And as authors, we tend to not understand these reasons. And so if you're wanting money, going with a publisher at all is probably not your best bet, because it is not a lucrative deal for your intellectual property. If you're wanting credibility, then yes, go find a publisher. Do your research, make sure that they have a good reputation, talk to other authors that have been published by them. There's a lot of things like writer beware. I think the SFPA puts that out. Do your research. My biggest frustrating thing with authors is that we feel like we're the girl that can't get a date with our writing. And so we'll basically give away everything.
Right,
Please publish me. Oh my
right, right,
gosh, I don't even know who you are, but I'm so honored to have your
right,
imprint
right.
on and I'll pay to have my work published. No, this is our intellectual property. We need to be paid for our property. And like I said, this is a 3-hour soapbox, so I will stay off of it. But it's just don't give your work away.
Yeah.
Just don't take every deal. Look at those contracts. A writer has the right, this is your property, to say, I don't like that in that contract, or I don't understand. it's okay to say, I don't understand what this means.
Yeah.
Can
Yeah.
you explain it to me in
Right.
layman's terms?
All right.
Because I'm a layman.
That was great, but we're running late. But it's time for a special segment on the show where we spin the wheel. On the wheel are seven possible categories, including
Oh, I
the
remember
ones I
this.
brought out for tonight's show. Wherever it lands is what you get. And the categories are dinner is served, stranger in a strange land, creature feature, soundtrack of your life, I am Rocket Man, no such luck, and zombie apocalypse. All right, I'm going to give it a whirl, and wherever it lands is what you get. Ready? There we go. What do we got? Round and round. And for you, we got no such luck. All right. I have no idea what this is about. So let's see what kind of nonsense I came up with. All right. Obi-Wan Kenobi famously said that in his experience, there is no such thing as luck. Yet some people do seem to be, lucky, while others seem to be unlucky. Do you believe in luck as some cosmic force that intervenes in our lives positively or negatively? Or do you believe that we make our own luck?
I believe we make our own luck, but I do believe it's cosmic.
So both.
Yeah. Well, because we influence the forces that be to make our luck.
Okay. All right. So you got to put yourself in a good position for good things to happen. All right.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So, all right. That was good. So now we're going to pick your poison. I got three choices for you, A, B, and C. I'm not going to tell you what's behind each one. Just pick one.
A, B, or C. All right, I'll pick A for Angela.
Okay. So this one has a bit of a wind up. I like this one myself because I think it's really going to put you to the test, but so bear with me. Okay. I'm going to give you two options that will define the rest of your writing career, but you can only pick one. And here are the options. Option number one, your next book is an international bestseller. You win every award there is. You make tons of money. Your book gets made into a movie that wins the Academy Award for Best Picture. You can ride the success forever. You will always be that writer. However, however, every book you write after that one, I mean, every single one, is an absolute dumpster fire, critically trashed, and a commercial zero. You are considered a washed up hack who can no longer even string together two cohesive sentences. Or, or you can keep writing as you've always done. You are generally well respected, and whatever level of financial compensation you get now is the top of the mountain. If we're up to you, given those two choices, which writing career path do you pick? Book of a lifetime or steady as she goes?
There she goes,
You're
for
passing
sure.
you're passing up the brass ring.
Yeah, yeah, because I would, because then you're always going to regret that. In my mind, I would always regret that. I'd always be trying to get back to that. And so then I'm damning myself to a life of unhappiness. I would always love the brass ring to be just ahead and keep me going, reaching for it.
All right, fair enough. All right, so I'm going to give you some truth serum. I got 10 questions. We're going to go quick. You ready?
Uh-huh.
Favorite flavor ice cream?
Anything with chocolate.
Okay, what's one food you will never eat ever for any reason?
Water chestnuts.
What are chestnuts? Okay, well, that's a first on the show. Okay, bucket list destination anywhere in the world. I think you mentioned it earlier.
Oh God, so many. Brazil. I'll say Brazil.
You live there.
Australia. Yeah,
Australia?
all of them.
I thought you were going to say Okinawa, but okay, there you go.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okinawa. I have a list. There's a big list.
Okay, fair enough.
Okinawa's next.
Okay, fair enough. All right, scariest movie you ever saw?
My God, they're so not scary. Like none of them are scary. Oh, the Blair Witch Project. That's pretty scary.
If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
To go invisible.
Do you play any musical instruments? And if not, which one if you could?
I don't, but I would play the accordion if I could.
Okay, that's a first. Okay, cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Favorite cocktail? And if you don't drink, your favorite unwind beverage?
Coffee.
Coffee, okay.
And you can put booze in the coffee.
There you go. All right. You can see a live performance, sports, music, theater, whatever, any seat, any venue, any time in history. What's your choice?
Oh God. I was gonna say Wicked, but anytime in history, I'd probably go back to Shakespeare and do a front. I do the cheap seats where all the fun stuff happens.
Okay, but what performance?
Romeo and Juliet,
Okay, fair enough. All right, if you could,
in case there was real blood.
All right, if you could get a continuation of any canceled TV show ever, what would it be?
Canceled TV show. Barely watch TV even to this day.
Oh, okay.
Uh, maybe Black Mirror. Did that get canceled?
I don't think so.
I don't know. I'd say Black Mirror or Sandman maybe got canceled. I don't know. There's so few that I've seen.
Oh, fair. All right, fair enough. We're done with you.
Yeah,
All right.
I'll go with Black Mirror in case it got canceled.
I don't think it did. But in any case, all right. So we're getting tight on time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, folks. I got some goodies for you, and then we're going to call it a night. So just bear with me for a moment, and I'll get you all set up. All right. What do we got here? We got here, and well, okay, Angela, talk to me. What are we looking at here?
Oh, that's my book in Eugenie. It's translated in Portuguese and English, and I've got more translations coming. This is actually my story about Okinawa and the fate of three girls, but it's a bigger story about just what happens during war. It takes place in World War II, but it's not a World War II story. It's about what happens to people in war. There is uh, there's graphic, violence and everything in it, but there's no sexual graphic violence, even though that's a part of it, but it is hinted at. So if that bothers you, then you know we know it's coming, but then it doesn't happen. I'm not gonna go there,
All right.
but it is there.
All right. Fair enough. And is it out now?
It is out now. It came out last year, I believe.
Okay.
And I'm getting ready to release a Portuguese version
Oh,
probably this month.
oh, very cool. Very cool. Good for you. All right, folks. So if you want some cultural horror and a descent into her history, there you go. All right, good for you. All right, as for me, so I want to call attention to Blunt Force Rising, which is the fourth book in my Angela Hardwick sci-fi thriller series. So for those of you who don't know, Angela Hardwick is a hard-boiled private eye. To me, she is part Blade Runner, part Doctor Who, part John Wick. She takes on the kind of cases that you think a private eye would take: missing persons, kidnapping, extortion, arson, murder. But she also takes on cases that deal with time travel and parallel universes, aliens, androids, spaceships, and there you go. Well, anyway, in the fourth novel, in Blunt Force Rising, Hardwick and her protege, Eric Whistler, are providing private security, as you can see here on this galaxy cruiser that's hosting an AI and robotics conference at a time when androids have recently been granted rights, but just because they have rights on paper doesn't mean that everyone's okay with it. Well, anyway, a murder takes place on board the ship. Chaos ensues. Communications are knocked out. There is no way off this. You're in a tin can floating in space, a million miles from anywhere. There's no way off. There's no one coming for help. And something else goes on, and it's basically a bloody, violent zombie apocalypse in a closed room setting. So it's a high octane thriller. Now, I want to say something. So this just happened yesterday. So one of my reviewer fans really wrote this incredible review, and I want to just share what she wrote. And she says, and this is just part of it. She says, what starts off as a light, quasi cozy mystery turns into a potentially darker political, metaphorical tones that eventually gives way to something darker, bloody, aggressive, animalistic, primal, and fatal. To me, she absolutely gets it. So if you like locked room mysteries and combined with high octane thrillers with some real blood and gore and horror, I really strongly recommend you check this out. There are 5 books in the series, and I'll be clear. You can read them in any order, or you can read them as a one-off. You do not have to commit to the whole series to enjoy one book. So you can jump in, read book 4 and be one and done, or you can come back and read them all. It doesn't matter. So don't be thrown off by the fact it's a series. You can read this by itself. Blunt Force Rising is available on Amazon, and it's published by Crazy 8 Press. Okay, guys, that is our show. I want to thank my guest, Angela Eureka Smith, for coming on and talking to her about her life and her history and her ghosts in the basement and her publishing career. And I want to thank everyone else who's watching at home. And as always, please, I ask you, be gentle, be kind, be generous of spirit, and for God's sakes, defend democracy, the Constitution, and don't let these MAGA motherfuckers steal our country from us. It's ours. Fight for what's important. All right, guys. I got one more show left for the season. I'll be taking a couple of weeks off. I'll be back in May for one more time, and that'll be it for me. But until then, I'll catch you guys on the next show and be well. All right, guys. That's it. Good night.
Bye.
Okay. Uh, hold on. And I think we're done.